What does it actually mean to be perfect, the way Jesus meant it, not the way we casually toss the word around today? Not good, not decent, not trying your best. Perfect. Jesus said this exact word out loud to a crowd of ordinary, exhausted people in one of the most famous teachings ever recorded. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Read that again and it sounds like a trap. It sounds like a standard nobody could ever hit. So why would Jesus set his followers up to fail on purpose? And why does almost every casual reading of this verse get the word wrong? Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what this word meant in the original language, and it changes the entire meaning of the passage. This verse comes from Matthew chapter 5, and it sits inside the Sermon on the Mount, which is the longest single teaching Jesus ever gave. Matthew wrote his gospel mainly for a Jewish audience, and his whole goal was to prove that Jesus was the long-promised king they had been waiting on for centuries. Most scholars place the writing sometime between the years 60 and 90, decades after Jesus lived. In the bigger story of the Bible, this moment is a turning point. Jesus has just started his public ministry, and instead of talking about politics or temple rituals, he's laying out something brand new. A completely different way to treat other people, including the people who treat you badly. Picture the scene for a second because it changes how you hear everything that follows. A crowd gathers on a dusty hillside. Tired farmers, fishermen and mothers, ordinary people who have spent their whole lives under Roman occupation, paying taxes to an empire that never asked their permission. They know exactly what unfairness feels like. They know what it's like to be pushed around by people with more power. And into that crowd, Jesus starts redefining what real righteousness looks like. Not the showy kind, the kind that actually changes how you treat your worst enemy. That context matters, because this teaching was never abstract theology for scholars sitting in a classroom. It was survival wisdom for regular people living through real hardship. Let's start with verse 38, because Jesus opens by quoting an older law that everyone in the crowd already knew. Ye have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. That law sounds brutal to modern ears, but here's the twist most people miss. It wasn't actually a call for revenge. It was a limit on revenge. In the ancient world, an insult could get you a beating, and a small injury could spark a family feud that lasted generations, dragging in cousins, neighbors, and entire villages. Before this law existed, a punched eye could get you a dead relative in return. This law said the punishment had to match the crime, nothing more and nothing less. For its time, that rule was actually a step toward fairness, not away from it. But Jesus pushes the standard even further. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. He isn't telling people to become doormats who accept every insult in silence. He's targeting something much deeper than a slap. He's targeting the human urge to get even, the itch for personal payback that lives in almost everyone. Jesus wants his followers to break that cycle entirely, not manage it better. Then in verse 43, he goes after an even bigger idea. You have heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. That second half, hate your enemy, was never actually written in the Old Testament law. Someone had just added it over time because it felt natural. And honestly, it still feels natural today. Jesus calls it out anyway, and he replaces it with something almost nobody was ready for. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Slow down and actually sit with that line. Love your enemies, bless the people who curse you, pray for the ones actively trying to hurt you. This is not gentle, feel-good advice. This might be one of the hardest single commands in the entire Bible, and Jesus immediately follows it with the reason behind it, that you may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. God does not ration sunlight based on who has earned it that week. He doesn't hold back the rain from people he happens to dislike. His kindness reaches good people and bad people at the exact same time, without a filter. Jesus is saying that if you want to reflect your Father's character, your love has to work the same indiscriminate way. Wide. Unconditional. Never based on merit. And that brings us straight to verse 48. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Here's the part almost every casual teacher skips completely. The original Greek word translated as perfect is teleios, and it does not mean flawless. It does not mean sinless, error-free performance. Teleios means complete, mature, fully grown into the exact purpose you were built for. Picture a small seed that eventually grows into a full, fruit-bearing tree. That tree is teleios. It's complete, doing precisely what it was designed to do from the very beginning. Ancient writers also used this same word for hitting a target dead center or for reaching a finish line after a long race. Not a flawless race with zero stumbles, just a race actually finished all the way to the end. That is the kind of perfection Jesus is actually describing here, not moral flawlessness. This is exactly why translation matters so much. English only has one word for perfect, and it usually means zero mistakes, a flawless report card, a spotless record. Greek had more nuance built in. Teleios pointed toward growth and purpose, not a scoreboard of errors. When that nuance gets flattened into one English word, the whole verse starts sounding like an impossible threat instead of an invitation to grow. Once you know the original idea, the verse stops feeling like a trap. So when Jesus says be perfect, he isn't demanding some impossible sinless scorecard. He's asking for complete, mature love, the kind that stretches to include your enemies and not just your friends. He already made this point earlier in the same chapter. Anyone can love people who love them back. Tax collectors do that. Strangers on the street do that. It takes zero spiritual growth to love someone who's easy to love. The real challenge, the actual mark of spiritual maturity Jesus is pointing to, is loving the people who give you absolutely nothing back, who never say thank you, and who might even keep hurting you in return. Let's make this concrete for a second. Picture a coworker who constantly undermines you in meetings, takes credit for your work, and talks behind your back. Every natural instinct says, get even, say something sharp, or just freeze them out completely. Jesus is asking for something much harder than any of that. Wish them well, and actually mean it. Not because they earned your kindness. Because that is exactly what complete, grown-up love looks like in practice. This isn't about becoming a pushover who accepts mistreatment. It's about refusing to let someone else's cruelty shrink the size of your own character. Or think about a family member who said something cruel at dinner last year, and you still bring it up in your head every time you see them. Complete love doesn't mean pretending the comment never happened. It means you stop feeding the resentment every single time their name comes up. You choose their good over your grudge, on purpose, again and again, one conversation at a time, until it slowly becomes natural instead of forced. That's what growth actually looks like up close, not one single dramatic moment, but quiet, repeated choices stacking up over time until the grudge finally loses its grip. Now let's clear up the two biggest misconceptions around this verse. First question people ask: does this mean Christians are expected to reach sinless perfection during this life? No. And Scripture is honest about that everywhere else. This verse was never about erasing every single flaw you have. It's about direction and growth, about maturing steadily toward the same complete love God already shows you. Second question people ask: does loving your enemy mean staying in a dangerous or abusive situation? Also no. Loving someone does not mean removing every healthy boundary you have. You can genuinely love someone in your heart and still protect yourself from real ongoing harm. You can pray for someone honestly, wishing them real good, and still choose to walk away from a relationship that keeps hurting you. Jesus is addressing the posture of your heart here, not your safety decisions. Third question people ask: does this verse mean feelings of hurt or anger are wrong to have in the first place? No, not at all. Jesus never says stop feeling the pain. He says don't let that pain steer you into hatred or payback. Feeling hurt is honest. Staying stuck in revenge is the part he's asking you to release. Here's the real payoff, hiding inside this whole passage. Jesus isn't handing his followers an impossible standard just to watch them fail at it. He's describing exactly what mature, grown-up faith looks like when it's fully lived out. Love that goes beyond simple fairness. Love that mirrors the way God already treats you, every single day, whether you've earned it that day or not. So let's bring this back to where we started. Being perfect sounded impossible at first, like a standard built to make you fail. Now you know it was never a demand for flawless behavior at all. It was a call toward complete, mature love, the kind big enough to stretch over the people who've genuinely hurt you, the people who don't deserve it and never asked for it. Once you see Teleios, you can't unsee it in this passage. That's the real perfection Jesus is inviting you toward. Not sinless, whole. Before the next video goes up, go read all of Matthew chapter 5 for yourself, not just this one verse we covered today. Read it slowly, and notice how many of Jesus' other examples follow this same pattern, an old rule, then a harder, more complete version of it. Then sit with this question honestly. Who is one person you're genuinely struggling to love right now? Drop your answer in the comments below. Even if it's just a single word. No explanation required. If this video finally made this passage click for you, hit subscribe right now before you forget. Next week, we're breaking down another verse that almost everyone reads completely wrong, and it might be the most misquoted line in the entire Bible.